We're going to be talking with a few experts here at the same time about the future of automation and from automated to autonomous production and the value of autonomous systems in the production of the future. Let's get them on stage to get right into the topic because as experiences showed, we always have a little time, and at the end there are so many questions we don't even get to, so let's use the time we have. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome from our partner Atos, the senior digital expert, Antonio Santos. Welcome, Antonio. Also with us from Frost & Sullivan, program manager Karthik Sundaram. Welcome. And last but not least, from Siemens Corporate Technology, Future of Automation, here's Juan Aparicio Ojea. Gentlemen, take a seat. First question. Did I pronounce your names correctly?
You did.
I did. OK. All right. Great. Great to have you on the show. Great to have you on the stage. The future of automation. And I don't know if you can see it up here. Here are your statements about autonomous systems. Maybe you can just briefly tell us, we'll start with you, what autonomous systems means for you, what comes to your mind spontaneously.
So autonomous system, autonomy is the evolution of automation.
Right.
Right. And people think it's just AI, put it on top, but I think it's much more. If you allow me an analogy, I think it's like making a cake, where the main ingredient is automation, then digitalization, and then on top AI, and that makes autonomy.
How about you?
So I would look at autonomy as the next step for automation's evolution, as he put it. I will give a different analogy. It's about trying to bring the machines and assets on the shop floor, making them more alive than they are currently. So that would be my first opening statement.
And your statement?
Automation will require a set of skills that was never seen before. So, and the diversity of those skills, if they are maximized and well integrated, that's what can potentially maximize what we can achieve with automation.
So what would you say, what is the actual value that these systems can bring to manufacturing, for example?
So today, all the automation that you see, right, is very precise. It's based on rules and in environments that are fixed. If we want to move to more undetermined environments, do things that were only possible with humans, then you need autonomy. You need the robots and machines to have the capability to be programmed at a high level, so that you don't lose so much time engineering the details of how the robots move, how the systems integrate. It has to be very easy that all these things work at the program at a very high level, like you do in the IT world, for example.
OK.
So I see this as a natural step for the industry to move forward. So we started off with hardware, then we had hardware plus software. Now what is next? So we will eventually move into a phase where we look at content and services surrounding any product that you can see in the shop floor. Now for that, autonomy is an enabler. So you need to have, I would say, a door for the conventional assets on the shop floor to expand and do more than what they can do currently. So this, I believe, will directly have an impact in what I see as a continuous or consistent need for end customers, which is to increase productivity, to increase efficiency, to reduce risks, to come out with more ingenious innovations. And for that, I think autonomy is a natural requirement. So from automation to autonomy, this will be the next, I should say, 4 to 5 decades of innovation. So we will move from software to a more abstract layer, which I think is currently a work in progress. And we cannot really bring in anything tangible, any tangible references at this stage, because it's in the process of getting formed. But it's certainly a path of no return. I think we have started on it, and we will continue to go in that route. And it will be a very interesting phase in the next 5 to 10 years as to how things evolve. I think we will have completely autonomous applications all around. So what I also say in my code is that anything that can be programmed today can become autonomous. So I think there will be a new term that we have to introduce into the industry, and I call it autonomization. So automation will be passe, it will be a thing of the past. So autonomization will be the future.
On the one side, just got a question from my side. On the one side, you're talking long term. You said 4 to 5 decades. On the other side, things change so rapidly, so quickly, that we could be talking about autonomous systems now, and in 5 years it might be something completely different.
Yeah, I think
Do you agree?
Yeah, I do agree, but I'm also trying to keep the context of where we are today. Now, I can give you an example. Autonomous applications in the health and social care sector have been found to have, can create a lot of value in terms of assistive functions for old people. But the problem is the complexity is so high, and the innovation appetite of the target market in question, they're not ready to take it. So I feel if you take a leaf out of that, I should say, trend, you put it in manufacturing today. Are the end customers today in a position to completely absorb everything that's coming out? No. It's going to be a certain phased development. It's not a question of technological development, it's a question of technological acceptance. And for that, I'm saying the critical mass, that was going to certainly take some time.
There are lessons learned from the autonomous driving community and everything that has happened, right? It looked like we will all be driving autonomous cars or being in autonomous car, not driving.
Right.
Already, right? But there are the realities that they are not out there, right? There are still so many, I think, sociological acceptance issues and ethical and other kind of aspects that we need to overcome. The technology is advancing, but still it's not as fast as we thought.
Do you, as the makers of these kind of technologies, get frustrated sometimes when it's like, why don't the people just accept this? It works. It's there. Use it.
No. What I like to say is that automation is not something that is happening today. It's something that is happening, over the last 30 years. Even after the Second World War, is not a new phenomenon. Yeah. So sometimes it's important to go back into the history of technology and see what was the drawbacks, because sometimes we really tend to forget some history lessons of the impact of technology in the market. So we really need to go back to some things that happened in the past that we can learn today. So we really tend to be so under pressure and be in this, we need to do it because the world is really going really fast. But sometimes it's important to stop, go back and see what happened in the last couple of years and then take from it.
And to your question too, okay, yes, sometimes coming from Silicon Valley, seeing all these exciting innovations out there, I want to just be able to use them, right? I see these startups, okay, this is going to be the next great thing, and then they disappear or whatever happens, right? So yes, there is some kind of users need to accept that, but now it's not only up to them. I think there is such pressure of not finding talent or jobs of people to work in manufacturing that this is going to happen even they want it or not, right? The average welder in the US is more than 60 years old.
Right.
What is going to happen when there are no more welders?
Right.
We better find ways to program a robot or a machine to be autonomous to do that task.
So what do we have already today? I mean, there are things in place, there are things in use. Can you give us some examples?
I think Karthik will be able to say other industries. What we can see, for example, in our booth, just as a hint of how the future can be, are tasks that could only be done by humans. For example, bean picking, right? That's something that if you go to an Amazon warehouse, is highly manual still because of the complexity of the objects that you need to dexterously manipulate. So what we have done, okay, we have created a solution on top of the automation, on top of the robotics and our PLCs, to add AI on top of that. So the robot can simply identify the object, see, okay, I had never seen this in the past, but it looks like a glass. I know how to grasp it, and I do it autonomously. There is still a gap between what you see here and what you will see in manufacturing, but it gives you a hint of how the future could look like. And it's, as I said at the beginning, not only AI, because an intelligent system will fail by definition, right? Because it's autonomous like we do as humans. So we have to add the autonomy, the automation around it to recover from such failures. And that's very important.
Interesting.
Right? So I think we still haven't really, we don't have something off the shelf to buy and implement in a factory. So this is possibly in a stage of nascency. But what has happened now is we have reached a technological tipping point where you have robots, sensors, data analytics, machine learning all coming together. And that's why I think that roughly becomes autonomous. I think you say it as artificial intelligence, digitalization, and
automation.
Automation. So I say it sensorization, data analytics, machine learning, and robots. So these things have come together, and you are now looking at the idea of autonomy. Now, we don't have anything immediately to go and implement in the market. There is a proof of concept like what we see, but the proof of value and the business models around it is still something that has to be worked on. And this is besides the other challenge of the current innovation appetite of end customers, right? There needs to be an equal, I should say, emphasis in terms of trying to derive the business models. And I think that is possibly the owners of companies like Siemens who are pioneering this step. I think it's possibly their responsibility and the responsibility of other suppliers in the industry to come out with that proof of value. Because otherwise what could happen, I'm just trying to look at it the other way, is this could also go in as some kind of a marketing fad if the proof of value is not adequately demonstrated. But I would like to see the glass half full. You said, are we frustrated at what we see in terms of the immediate lack of acceptance? I think this reticence from the end customers is a healthy thing for the industry. Remember, we are not changing phones, we are changing machines.
Right.
Yeah? Right. And I think we also have to be considerate of the end customer in the manufacturing space. It's not so easy to change something physically as you can change something digitally. So this learning phase is not a period of frustration. I think it's a period of improvisation in terms of what we already have, come out with the good business models that can work in the future.
Anything you'd like to add, Antonio?
Yeah, I think that sometimes you focus so much on the technology side, while the customers, they have KPIs that they want to achieve. They really understand that language. So the CFO understands that language. So if you're able to use technology and somehow discodify the language of automation in a way that the CFO can understand, oh, I'm saving money because now I'm able to automate and I'm able to adjust how my factory is able to manage energy and save in energy costs, the CFO will immediately understand that.
Sure. It was a question of communication, and once again, everybody has a different point of view, obviously.
I was going to add that having success stories and sharing them with the community is such an important task. For example, I'm part of an initiative in the US, different companies, Siemens included, but Amazon, Google, the Microsoft of the world, where we all come together and say, okay, we are going to form a committee on AI, and we are going to make the users share their best practices, because that's the only way that people will realize what is autonomy, right? They see it. If they see, okay, this company has already implemented this and they are successful. Now, the problem here is that if you are successful, you don't share it, right? So we are creating some initiatives for end users to share the success stories.
Well, basically the same thing is happening in the area of cybersecurity. If you look at what Siemens has done with some partners with the Charter of Trust, I don't know if you've heard about that, but basically the same idea to show people, make people aware of the importance of it by partnering up and that from a very high level. I mean, they're talking to politicians, to governments, and once they understand it, it can trickle down. I don't know, might be the kind of like the same thing that you'd want to do in that case. Another question, what functions and aspects in manufacturing and production can autonomous systems actually help? Like where in the production process do you see autonomous systems now actually being most effective?
So for big customers, like automotive, right? If something could have been automated already, it's already automated, right?
Yeah.
But the last assembly line, the last part actually is where more jobs are created. And there are famous also car companies from where I'm from California, that have suffered that firsthand, right? That they tried to automate that part and it was very difficult for them. So they came back and hired more people. So it's important I think that will be the first area, the assembly, the final assembly, the things that only humans can do right now because of the dexterity. We are very dexterous, and also in ourselves autonomous machines, right? So these are the kind of applications, so assembly, beam picking, handling with anything that is unstructured. And of course also the mobility, right? We see this example for self-driving cars. We are moving also from AGVs to autonomous mobile robots that can go anywhere, right? There will be much more mobility around the manufacturing floor. I think these areas will be the first ones, also because of the job pressure and the need to add automation there for the quality that will be automatized.
We also have a great showcase also here at the stand, by the way. If you walk down the aisle, pretty much at the middle, where you can actually see robots basically recognizing and moving parts autonomously, right? I think these machines are also able to detect when maintenance or spare parts need to be ordered, stuff like that. It's a really nice thing to check out. Sorry, would you?
Yeah, I think he's pretty much captured where we can find space for autonomous systems. I think it's in production and of course in logistics and supply chain, very broadly, broadly put. But I also feel we should not restrict autonomous systems to merely mean robots and robotics, expansion of robotics. Yes, that will be the first port of call for autonomous systems. But I feel the idea of autonomous systems can also expand into more sedentary machines and assets. And autonomy needn't necessarily mean mobility. It could also mean having the ability to decide on the next course of action depending on what just happened previously. The more contextual and situational intelligence that can come into machines. You see the robot there, I think the robot is having that contextual awareness. And also, depending on what color we want it to pick it up, it's able to understand and it is able to do that. So I would say it's about anywhere where we find value in personifying machines. There, I think there is a room for autonomous system to enter. So, in fact, I said this even initially, if there is anything that is programmed, I think there is a scope for autonomy.
Right.
And I think there is going to be varying degrees of autonomy in the future, much like what we see in the automotive space. So there can be different levels of autonomization that a given asset can have. And I think this is where I think the kind of charter of trust, I think it should eventually expand into a standards and regulatory body.
Right.
Where you arrive at regulations in terms of what does, say, level 1 of autonomy mean. And can this turbine or this compressor have this degree of autonomy? It's not just about autonomous guided vehicles moving all by themselves. I think that's a very limited viewpoint of what autonomy we can bring into the shop floor. It can be much, much more. Yeah.
I think a few months ago, we all have heard about that in Finland. It's possible for common citizens to go and learn about AI. So that helps people to understand the context of the technology that we're talking here. And that will help people to bring that basic knowledge through work and to the activities that they develop. So when an employee sees a robot in a factory, they say, oh, maybe I'm working here for so many years. Maybe I'm not really an expert in AI or in robotics, but I know how my factory works. Maybe I should go and reach out some experts and say, maybe you can do this, maybe we can do that, because that experience from the shop floor can actually help machines also to improve. And by doing that, going back to your question, today in many situations you still do quality assurance at the end. You can perfectly do quality assurance along the process. So when you finish the product, the quality and the measurement of the product is ready. You don't really have to spend time doing the quality assurance at the end, and autonomy can play a very important role in that aspect.
Now, you've been talking about autonomous systems on the shop floor, but what exactly will drive autonomous systems to the shop floor? IT, OT companies, give us.
You've touched a raw nerve. I mean, but I come from an analyst company, so I can shoot both ways. So I will try to possibly give you a very measured, balanced opinion here. I think we've long believed that OT companies or operational technology companies have an edge in terms of achieving digitalization or moving digitalization into manufacturing. And that's because they have the domain know-how of how manufacturing works, how a food and beverage plant works, how an oil and gas process functions, how an automotive production line is set up. So they always had the edge, but now with autonomous systems, I think it started with artificial intelligence, and with autonomous systems as we speak about it now, I believe non-industry participants like those from the IT world have a greater chance than ever before to get a stake and create the manufacturing markets of the future. So this is, it's an interesting, I should say, inflection point. Because you need domain expertise. And you need domain expertise of both OT companies, operational technology companies, automation vendors, as well as IT companies, because they bring that knowledge of artificial intelligence, which will not be possible for most OT companies to develop indigenously. I think the learning curve will be very, very long. And I think the market could move a lot faster if there are more alliances and partnerships.
Right.
So we are already seeing that happen. We are seeing more IT companies participate in the Hanover Fair than ever before. So I think now it's in an interesting inflection point. And I don't want to say who's going to really drive this forward, but I see both have a very good chance of going ahead.
So once again, a great example of how partnering, with as many people as possible, or companies as possible. Like, let's say MindSphere is only that strong simply also because it's partnered up with so many people and companies thinking in the same direction. At the end of the day, you can have the brightest idea, you can have the most brilliant strategy. If you're playing a solo game, you're probably going to lose to a team. And I guess that's kind of...
Yeah, but I think partnering is the first step. I think what's important is things have to come into place harmoniously. And I think at the end of the day, there should be a clear value that is communicated and that is realized. But I think for the first step, of course, you need to achieve competitive synergies and not try to reinvent the wheel all by yourself. I think that's a realization that has definitely come into place. I think the partner ecosystem, whether it's for the MindSphere world or any other, we could see that this has really moved forward. But now the challenge is when you have too many things too many partners to handle, the challenge becomes all the more difficult to place it properly. Otherwise, things could also go the other way.
Of course, of course.
I think there is still a lot of value. I mean, the cloud in the future will flourish, right? We will see more and more applications on the cloud and a lot of partnerships over there, as you are seeing in MindSphere. But the edge will bloom. There will be the power of automation will really reside on the edge because that's where you touch the real world, the physics, everything is out there when you are touching. And that's in there, the OT companies are uniquely positioned. As Karthik was saying, our domain knowledge, the fact that we understand how the process works, how is it controlled, that is right now more an art than a science, right? Automation, we think it as a science, but there is a lot of art behind that. How do we capture that domain knowledge, and how do we offer the computational capabilities on the edge to enable this autonomy? That will be a key asset, and I think for that, the OT companies are very well positioned, but they cannot do it alone, and there will be some partnerships also going alone, like what we are doing, for example, in the edge with Intel, for example, right? We came up with a new neural processing unit that can add AI right into the edge, leveraging the unique capabilities from Intel in terms of computing of the new chipsets.
I don't think, considering the complexity of the systems that we are dealing here today, and that in the end somebody needs to go and sell the products, we cannot reduce this to IT and OT. There's a level of complexity that will require other people to come on board from the business side. They need to be involved. And people with new skills. IT and OT doesn't mean that you have digital skills, that you have a digital mindset. So you need to bring people from design, from other areas into this mix and embrace the complexity of all these functions. And if you are able to do that well and bring all this knowledge together, that's when you are going to be able to create real value and create the real use cases that will benefit the customer. And then in the end, it will benefit the way how your sales teams work, because they will be better positioned to understand the whole spectrum of automation.
So let's...
Just one last thought, because we can learn from the self-driving community, right? That's a very good example how, from the last years, a lot of people have tried to push that industry. And companies like Google, they tried at the beginning to also do their own cars. They figured out, okay, this is very difficult. So we better partner with Chrysler and focus on what we do well. That is all this autonomy software part on top. So this synergy is very clear here, right? Making a car is very hard. So why shouldn't we do it? Let's partner with the experts and we add the layer on top.
So let's think one step further. Let's say we're at the shop floor. An autonomous system is integrated, whatever. What is the relation of the worker on the shop floor with the system?
I think he will have more, different consciously enabled assets to deal with than before. As I said, there could be a scenario where, in the future, where a worker could talk to a machine and ask the machine to do a given task.
Right.
So you can call it humanoids if you want, just if you want to make it more sci-fi. But I think it will be collaborative to begin with. I think most mundane tasks have already got automated. I think they will completely get automated in the future. And I think the worker requirement would move into more strategic value-added functions than the repetitive tasks that we do in the shop floor. I think this is where the big disruption will happen. But I still feel it remains to be seen what will be the manufacturing jobs of the future. In fact, I think we have a future of work
panel later.
Later. I think I would be interested to understand what will be the job profiles of the future, because there were many job profiles of today did not exist 50 years back. I think, or 10 years, or 20 years back. A lot of new job profiles have come up. I think in the next 10 years we could see many different manufacturing jobs, which at this point in time we might not be able to give a clear form and shape to. So I think the worker definition of the future, how he is going to work, it has to be based on what will be the needs or functions of the future. And I think at this point, we can at best make some conjectures, but I think it will be very vastly different from what we can ever think of it to be at this point.
And it's, as Karthik was saying before, it's not a binary decision. It's not, I am autonomous, I'm not autonomous. There are levels.
Yeah.
One very interesting example that we are seeing in the fair, right? We have an autonomous system, but the system can ask for help if it doesn't know what to do. And that everybody feels like, oh, yes, this makes a lot of sense. For example, if it doesn't know how to grasp, it just signals a message to the human saying, okay, I don't find the object, help me with this. It's helping the humans, helping the machines will be a task for the future.
It's like personifying machines. You're making them more human.
Right.
No, and you have to realize that today you have a new colleague at work, the robot, and having people who have the ability to understand the full context of activity of a specific machine, who works with that robot on a daily basis, could be someone that is in the shop floor, not an engineer, but that person can provide a very valuable feedback through the observation that he provides to the engineers that have the responsibility of coding and making sure that it's operating. So there will always be an important role for people who are in the shop floor in this type of activities. Their role would change, and they will have a more proactive role in terms of the feedback, where they can report about the relationship they are having with the machines, and their observations will be extremely valuable to make sure that the relationship between both smooth, and then you are able to have a full functional factory without interruptions.
And a very interesting line of research and development that will happen is all these cultural differences, right? Our personal space is much different in Europe, in the US versus Asia. The acceptance of humanoids is very different from Japan to Europe, for example. This kind of, how do you encode the cultural differences in automation, in autonomous systems? That will be a very interesting thing to see.
Please.
There's an interesting work that is being done in Japan, where they need people to support elderly, and they are bringing robots to support the elderly, and they were trying to find ways to invest on that, and they were actually struggling to identify who would work with the robots. There was, even if there was investment, there was some resistance in terms of the adoption of robots when dealing with the elderly. And then they created the concept of Web 5.0, where they are actually trying to bring this mix of human and robot relationship in order to create a vision about what the future could be.
Once again, it's a question of acceptance. Right?
I think just to add to your point, so maybe in the future, I'm just trying to think think wild here. So there could also be a need to have some kind of a module or an algorithm that absorbs the culture of the given factory in question, and then it brings about that cultural or emotional approach which is admissible in that area. I think that's also something that will be required. It is not the core function, it's more the soft function that will surround, because now we are dealing with possibly emotions with people in the shop floor. And I think that changes a lot of things.
No, let me just do my correction.
One more.
It's not Web 5.0, it's Society 5.0, where what we are talking here is being sought from a higher level and being spread through society to have everyone aware about this concept of human robotics and future of society.
We could talk about this, like I said at the beginning, for another hour easily, but unfortunately our time is up. But what we can say is it's a super interesting journey. I don't know if we're in the middle of it, in the beginning, in the end, it's a gradual evolution, so to say. Like you said before, we started off some point, but you can't say if this is going to be the direction in 5 years. What we know is that it will shape the future for the next 4 to 5 decades, like you said before. And I'd like to thank you all for joining me in this panel. One big round of applause to Antonio, Karthik, and Juan. Thank you.
Thank you.
So, you guys have a great day.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Siemens. Ingenuity for life.